listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God! Give away.
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Sean.
Hello.
And we'll be discussing the movie Cargo, which is available on Netflix Watch Instant, the new Martin Freeman starring zombie movie. In case you're not zombied out, it's something that's out there, and it's been getting a bit of discussion, so we're covering that. And two, if you're watching the video version, the reason we're in a different room than normal is that my house, the upstairs, is really hot, so I didn't feel like sweating through my clothes during the course of recording it.
The audio may sound a little bit differently, too.
Yeah. I mean, once it's all cleaned up, it should sound about the same, but we're recording this in my downstairs instead of my upstairs. So that is why there's a difference there, if you've noticed anything. But before we get to discussing Cargo, we'll go through some recent news and things we've been watching. And on prior podcasts, we talked about the Halloween trailer and all that stuff. People continue to talk about that. And I think that the official mask from the movie is on sale via Trick or Treat Studios, and it's available for pre-order now. And I've seen a lot of people discussing it and saying, "Oh, it doesn't look like the movie one." But I mean, I think that
It's only like $50, right?
it's like $60, and
Okay.
from what I've seen, it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
It's just people in this day and age find something to complain about everything. And, you know, they even showed pictures of what the original mask from Halloween 1 and 2, I think, looked like. This has been sitting in, like, a glass case since 1981 or whatever. And, of course, it doesn't look exactly like that because that is just latex and sitting there. And if you were to just do that, it might look boring. And 2, technically, the end of the Halloween... Well, it's ignoring Halloween 2, so the mask would not have gotten scorched and destroyed. But looks good enough. I might actually get one of those. I'm not sure yet.
I mean, that's a good price, you know.
Yeah, $60. It's up there where, you know, they put the time and effort to make it look somewhat accurate, but it's not prohibitively expensive.
It's not a $350 mask, which I'm sure there's plenty of people that want that. But it's just, you know, they'll probably sell a lot of those masks at that price.
I don't need a $300 and something mask. That's more than what it costs to get our custom one made for Hazard that we use.
Yeah.
But there's also been some pictures that came out from Rob Zombie's 3 from Hell.
Well, and 2, the thing about Halloween that we saw recently was Jake Gyllenhaal apparently was instrumental in getting Jamie Lee Curtis to sign on to the film because I guess he worked with David Gordon Green, and I can't remember on what, but apparently he sung his praises and said like it was like a an experience that defined him. So he told her, "Hey, you need to work with him." So who knows if she would have even came back if it was a different director signed on? You know, maybe that's why this pitch came together and it just happened to work this way. So
because you don't really know a lot of times on these different projects. It's always interesting to hear like who almost did something. Yeah, directors, actors, whatever. But it seems like this current iteration would not have worked the way that it is scripted without Jamie Lee Curtis being involved, or if they did have been a massive variation. So I guess horror fans can thank Jake Gyllenhaal for vouching for David Gordon Green.
I think it would have been great if they would have had just recast her like Heather Langenkamp was recast, and then they did a new Nightmare, another new Nightmare with Jamie Lee. You know, just swap horror icons.
Yeah, but we'll the trailer is already out. There's really not much more to know about the movie before it comes out. You either want to see it or you don't. Or you do want to see it and you just want to complain about it.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for it. It's one of the movies I'm really looking forward to seeing how that turns out. And then, like I said, so the Rob Zombie's 3 from Hell. If you don't know anything about it whatsoever at all, I guess you can skip ahead a few minutes. But there's a picture of Sherry Moon Zombie wearing a shirt that said "Free Baby," so it just makes it sound like the storyline for it's going to involve at the end of Devil's Rejects, and I think she has like scars on her arms,
or like bullet
holes.
Where there was bullet wounds or
so. It looks like for this new movie that the assumption is that all the characters survived the end of the Devil's Rejects and did not die in the hail of bullets and gunfire. So they're in prison and I guess have kind of like a Charles Manson type cult of celebrity around them.
It's the world that they built in that film. I mean, granted, was it Sheriff Weigel? Is that the one that
Weidel?
Granted, he was the one that was all in on revenge
Yeah.
and going outside the law. But just the way that world is built, even if they would have survived, you would have assumed that all those sheriffs or officers would have just killed them anyway. You know what I mean? Like, made sure the job was done.
Well, especially
not call,
late 70s, 80s,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, which, whatever, that's fine. And it does, say if you watch these together, it would definitely probably lessen the impact. Unless this film is amazing.
Yeah.
And there is a stellar reason for it. And I'm not saying that film is necessarily going to be bad at all. Like, it could be great on its own, but
Yeah.
it seems like it lessens the impact of the end of Devil's Rejects.
Well,
that made it so good.
Yeah.
But you could still watch that film as it is and just assume they died, and it's its own experience.
Well, and two, I think that the new movie's being shot from what it looks like on digital, from the screenshots he's taken from like an Aria Red or one of like the modern day cinema cameras. Devil's Rejects was shot on film.
Yeah.
Very distinctively, shot. They kind of became his style because House of Thousand Corpses was so all over the place, and there's the neon lighting and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 underground cave thing, and
the
Dr.
now disgraced founder of Nerdist.
yeah, Chris
Former host of
Hardwick.
Singled Out.
The allegedly disgraced host.
Well, he is now basically.
At this point, he's been wiped from the annals. So if you're not aware what that is, so Chris Hardwick was in House of a Thousand Corpses as the long-haired guy that yells "Dr. Satan" and is kind of annoying.
They have the big prosthetic of him at some point, right? Isn't he the one that?
No, he's one of the ones that gets put down in the cat. He gets put in a bunny suit. And I think that like his head's messed up.
Okay.
And Rainn Wilson is the one that gets turned into the bus.
That's right.
But yeah, so there was allegations against him that came out from an ex-girlfriend that kind of instantly cratered him, and like the Talking Dead's been put on hiatus, and
that's what I meant by disgrace. They basically kicked him off of the AMC shows and Comic-Con and stuff.
I don't think they've officially ended all those shows. They just put them on hiatus or haven't made announcements yet. But depending on how that stuff goes, they probably will not be looking to bring him back. But so I'm assuming he will not be in 3 from Hell from everything we've seen.
Yeah.
But the idea that all the characters lived, and then they're going to have, I know they had like the cast list, like Danny Trejo is listed. I don't remember if Diamond Dallas Page was listed or not. But it just seems like you had a movie that was kind of a high watermark for what Rob Zombie had done at that point or in his career, really, in my opinion. And to kind of undo that with a sequel, like, you knew that there's a lot of people who wanted to see it. But I think they said that based on the timing of when Devil's Rejects took place, if real world time has elapsed from that movie to this one, it'll be 1991 in the new movie, which could be interesting.
I was trying to get a feel in the time era for see how the sheriffs look and stuff, or the police officers, and I couldn't tell really. But even in a small town,
in Texas, it may
look like
much.
it's 1983 or something like that. It was set in the 90s.
And two, I just have a feeling like at this point, based on Rob Zombie's filmography, I would assume the budget for this is not higher than Devil's Rejects. It's probably lower. And I don't know how well you can recreate, heavy like aesthetics of a specific time period on a lower budget. I mean, you can.
Granted, they just used like a motel. You know what I mean? The whorehouse, whatever.
If it's all in a prison, that'd be pretty disappointing.
Yeah,
but then if they escape, I don't know.
You could make a good prison film like that, but
people really do try.
Yeah.
But I'll be interested to see what comes of it. It's not my most anticipated movie of anything. It's just
definitely curious about it,
because I think with Rob Zombie, after the Halloween movies, he did Lords of Salem, which was kind of a flop or underappreciated or ignored or whatever you want to say in terms of it wasn't a huge success. And it's not something that's really culturally relevant. And 31, it's 31, right?
Yeah.
Because I always confuse all his movies have different numbers. That one was just kind of there, and it seemed like people complained about it or talked about it. I think the video version of the podcast, either the video or the download, when we reviewed that, got a lot of views or downloads. I can't remember which one. One of the two, either like the iTunes download or the YouTube video, got some decent views.
Yeah, the Rob Zombie stuff. So their fans are out there clamoring for anything Rob Zombie related.
People want to defend it or crap all over it, but we'll have to wait and see what this movie is. I don't really think you need to watch a trailer. Just watch it.
When is it supposed to come out?
I don't think there's an official date. He just said it would be after he got done from his tour that they would go to the editing bay. So that'd be towards the end of the year when they start editing it.
Okay, cool.
So it'd probably be like a mid-20, depending on the distribution things, it could be early to mid. Well, if they're just starting editing at the end of 2018, it'd probably be like mid to late 2019 before we see it.
Which, again, it's kind of cool. Something else to look forward to. It may not be like, hey, this is going to be a home run, but, something interesting.
It'll
get people talking. Tons of hits on Bloody Disgusting, I'm sure, for every article and screenshot.
And they'll give Bill Moseley and Sid Haig things to talk about when they travel the convention circuit.
Yeah.
But, so there was the still frame from that got released.
Friday the 13th litigation, I guess there's...
Legally, they're not going to make any more new content for the game.
Yeah, they said basically, I guess everything is on the skids. Everything's on hiatus. Any film developments, any game content creation. They said they can work on balancing patches and stuff, stability stuff, but they can't actually add new content to the game or anything like that. So that's where it affects fans, actually affects fans if you are into that game and you're paying attention and looking for that DLC and everything to come out. Movies, who's to say a movie will be being made regardless if there was any issues legally with that? But it's a shame that there is a holdup. Just because if somebody has a great idea, that would be cool. But what do you do now with Friday the 13th after you've already had a reboot that was pretty good, but it was a pretty straightforward Friday the 13th movie? You know what I mean? Like
it was a reboot/remake of the first 4 films, kind of.
Yeah. So what do you do now?
And I don't really know where you go from there because I think those Platinum Dunes like that and that movie had a better reception than Nightmare on Elm Street, which just got trashed. Both movies made money. It's just I think that it left such a bad taste in the mouth of the executives. They don't really touch those properties again.
Yeah, most people were fine with that Friday the 13th. The Nightmare on Elm Street, they did say specifically, we didn't want to return to that well because of all the backlash. Like, it just wasn't worth it. So there you go. Congratulations. You killed Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, I want to.
For the foreseeable future.
Because I've seen people writing articles about how, there's the crowd of Nightmare isn't just Robert Englund. There's the crowd. I mean, it's a cool concept in that you can be killed in your dreams by a supernatural entity. The fact that they want to tie it to one actor so specifically who's 70-something now, and obviously doesn't really want to come back to that because of the makeup and the physical toll, and hasn't done that role since Freddy vs. Jason in 2003? So it's been a long time.
Unless there's some voice work in Ready Player One. I didn't see that yet.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's just one of those things where it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Fans want new content, but then they get it, they tear it to shreds. And you could, argue about the quality of that movie and that remake. It's just, I think at this point it seems pretty acidic to some of the executives because they don't want to get, they don't want their, because some of the executives of Platinum Dunes, they didn't touch horror again until I think The Purge.
Yeah.
When Jason Blum kind of brought that to him. So they really soured on horror for a while because of the reaction to that movie. So I'll just be interested to see if anything can happen with that. I would think if Halloween does well, then that would have to encourage them with the popularity of Insidious and all these dream-based things, that there's a lot of room there to do something. I think you have to be so different from the original that it doesn't make it the same, that it doesn't just make the same thing. I mean, too, we've seen with a lot of these movies, if you say, okay, let's make Freddy Krueger a female, that's immediately going to turn half the people against you, or a small amount of people that are vocally very against it very, very quickly. So I don't really know what you do with that franchise. If you make it too different, it's just going to piss people off.
I would love to see an anime. Even that would be a middle ground where you could, have Robert Englund voice it, but just based on... you could spend some money on this, but the budget would be based on the animation quality, not the ideas. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just based with dream sequences and stuff. Yeah. Granted, live action would be awesome, but it'd be hard to make a lot of people happy doing a live action one. And just I don't know. I would love to see. I would love to see an animated one, but very stylized. From a specific artist's vision, not even just let's make it realistic or whatever. Somebody has a distinct style and vision for this, and let them go wild.
I guess you could almost do the Animatrix with Freddy Krueger, where there was just a bunch of interconnected or non-connected stories of different styles and different things.
Yeah, I would love to see, I would love to see more animated stuff with former franchises.
Yeah.
But not. I mean, I'm not just saying like just some Saturday morning cartoon style. Let's just do a TV series. Like I'm talking about something for adults, and I don't mean it has to be like the grossest thing ever, but something that is taken seriously and they put a little bit of money behind it. I would love to see that. Just because none of those horror franchises have ever been translated to animation in that way before.
Yeah, so we'll see if they do anything in that franchise. I think, if Halloween does gangbusters, that might encourage them to get back into it and figure out something to do. But at this point, it's just a fan base is very acidic when it comes to if you do anything that's not Robert Englund, people are going to be upset and want to have a petition. But then that he's not going to do it. It's
such a cool world to explore. It's a shame that.
I mean, maybe you just make a Nightmare on Elm Street and you don't have a Freddy Krueger. You go just a different Elm Street. Maybe it's not just the fact that it was Freddy Krueger. It's that area has something to it that makes it where things like that can happen. Yeah. So you just explore a different story thread disconnected from Freddy, 30, 40 years later or something.
But who are you going to have starring Pizza Hut ads?
Bitch. But yeah, so that was the stuff like that. I'm trying to think, was there other news? Oh, the show Legion I've talked about got renewed for season 3. I think the ratings are pretty low, but I guess they just really liked what they were doing at the show.
That's good.
It ended on a very controversial note, so I have to see where it goes.
How did you feel about how it ended?
Like, do you know anything about how it ended?
No, I didn't even know.
I'm not going to say anything about it. It's just, like, the ending, when I watched it, I thought it was, like, a very well-done finale that had me super excited for a season 3. And after I sat and thought about the implications, a lot of this stuff, I was like, oh, wait, there's a lot of weighty stuff here. And then the way anything goes on the internet now, anytime you have certain issues that could be controversial, people just don't even want to have a sane discussion. They just go into attacking each other and coming at it from all these different angles.
Fun.
So the show itself, like visually, like this second season, a lot of people have said that it was a lot more style over substance. And I wouldn't disagree with that, but I was into it and the visual style and all the things they were doing. So I enjoyed it. So it's kind of like if you like Twin Peaks: The Return, it's like those memes that are usually 3 panels. This thing is just this other thing for people that like this thing. So it's Legion is just X-Men for people who like Twin Peaks: The Return. It's kind of like with the description some people have said. So I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that.
Which you could see why the ratings would be a little low.
Yeah. So when you have obscure things that aren't Wolverine popping claws out and stabbing things, and it's much more. There's never really been much hand-to-hand combat or fireball shot or people doing things. It's more been like the battles are very visually interesting. So I'm glad to see that get season 3. And it ended on a very controversial note. So it'll be interesting to see. I think that's a show that benefit from being on, because season 1 I think may be on Hulu. So if they get it on streaming platforms, I think they could drum up more interest for season 3, because the second season does move a little bit more slowly. But if you were to binge watch it, then it wouldn't, because you would just kind of get through all the stuff all together. Because like some shows like Stranger Things, when they had the 1 episode detour that did nothing to advance the major plot line, people got upset. But since it was, a streaming show, you could just immediately watch the next one. People didn't really get that angry over it. They're just like, that was a waste.
They won't complain about it. I mean, they complained about it, but
not to the same level.
It won't dominate the conversation for a whole week until the next episode comes out. And then past that, it's mixed in with everything else, with a lot of other positive buzz,
Yes.
on the whole. So,
that's cool. What was something you were going to mention?
Stuff I watched. I don't know if I had any other news, though. Not that I can think of.
Yeah, so that was kind of the news. Things that we've been watching. So you haven't watched any of Arrested Development season 5, have you?
I watched Kimmy Schmidt, but not Arrested Development.
So I watched season 5.
Part 1, basically, right?
Yeah, it's part 1, because they kind of broke it into 2 parts. I think for Emmy consideration, to have things out in time to be eligible to be nominated. Like, I enjoyed it. There was one joke I really loved. That was with George Michael and Maybe. So there's one joke I really loved. Some of the other stuff, it felt like it was trying really hard to get from where season 4 was to a format that's more recognizable to the original 3 seasons. And you can feel that strain in the first episode as they try to kind of shuffle all the pieces on the chessboard back to a more season 3-ish tone. And after they get through that, then it's a lot more enjoyable.
So do they kind of like explain? Like, is it basically like setting things up? Because it's like they should just jumped into it.
Well,
and
the
just
plot
been
is
like,
in-
hey, you know, because I don't even care what happened in season 4.
Well, I think though the thing is they realize that from season 4 they have to give some type of direction as to
Closure or
where they're
something,
going.
yeah.
So they kind of had to catch it's an incredibly intricate plotting going on, but then there's a lot of things that have to kind of move around the board a little bit and kind of retcon things. Like Michael kind of gets retconned more back to like seasons 1 through 3 Michael, and there's just kind of resetting things a little bit to get you into a familiar place.
We almost started it, or I almost thought about starting it, but it's one of those shows that I actually want to pay attention to. So every time, maybe we'll start this night when my daughter goes to sleep because my wife's off tomorrow. So, because, you know, it's like, it's not a show you want to half watch because some of the jokes and humor move so fast and they're so layered that you will, you know, it could easily turn you off the show if you are missing some of the major punchlines, or if they get ruined and then you go back and watch it like, oh yeah, that was funny. Like, I do not want to ruin that show, even though I was like not like through the moon excited for it. But I loved season 1 through 3, and I thought 4 was okay. I didn't love it, but
So I think
I watched it, you know,
So I
which
think-
a lot of things, if I don't like, I will not watch.
I think basically that if, you know, somebody really loved seasons 1 through 3 and either enjoyed or tolerated season 4, then this one's worth watching.
Yeah.
But if somebody just really hated and was turned off by season 4, I don't think this turns it around completely.
It's been a long time since those first 3 seasons.
And then
you
there's
know,
and then there's also the behind the scenes off, you know, the
That
drama
taints
going
it.
on around that the New York Times interview and other things. So if you keep that separate from it,
I also just loved young George Michael and Maybe.
Yeah.
You know, like I love that. And granted, we had 3 seasons of that.
Yeah.
They milked that, and they, you know what I mean? It's fine that they're not at that stage anymore because they did get a lot of mileage out of that.
Yeah.
But you know, things change, so I'll probably check that out.
yeah.
Anything
and
else?
I did watch a little Kimmy Schmidt.
Yeah.
Got mostly caught up on Handmaid's Tale, which is a show you just kind of have to be in the mood for because it's usually really dark.
Yeah. I've never been in the mood to start that show.
So it's a good show. It's got great acting in it. It's got very stylized cinematography and lighting, and it's a show that, you know, kind of seems like vision driven. It's not just kind of paint by numbers procedural. There's, you know, more intricate plotting, and it's very stylized. But it's a real downer. So there's been some days where it's like nice and sunny and bright out, and I was like, I just don't really feel like watching
You know,
this.
there's a lot of stuff. I get on Twitter and everything's a real downer. So the last thing I want to do is spend an hour of.
Well, and two, it's one of those things where, you know, a fanatical group takes over the government that forces their religious ideals down the throats of the general populace. It's not that hard to see a future where, with our current president, someone tried to assassinate the president, and then they're able to clamp down with martial law and do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Or any president.
Any sort of disaster, or, you know, anything at 9/11 like that. There's a huge response to that, and people are able to sweep a lot of things under the rug and just make moves so fast that people don't even see it coming.
To the premise of Handmaid's Tale, so if you've seen the movie Children of Men, kind of similar idea, just not as extreme, where childbirth rates have gone down, and then just a religious group who blames it all on, you know, not following the certain interpretation of the Bible and God's will is the reason why, and then they rise to prominence and then take over the U.S., and women are forced to either kind of go out and work in radioactive fields that are the result of conflict, or be handmaids if they're of childbearing age and have had children before or capable of having children, where essentially these guys who are controlling things, you know, in the ruling class, they have wives, but they have the handmaids that they will try to impregnate to have a child. And the wife's there, but it's not really sexual, and it's really weird. So it's just like that. It's just about the women. Like, the main character is Elizabeth Moss, who's one of the people who's a handmaid. So it just kind of goes through all that stuff. It's a dark show. And not necessarily, there's not like people getting, for the most part, it's not like Saw or Serbian film or something like that. It's just a lot of downbeat stories where people just have bad things happen to them. So that's what I mean. Like,
maybe season 3 will be a full-on revenge, like, where, you know what I mean, like a revenge film or a revenge
slicing
series.
people up. Yeah. So it's a show. Like, if you know, if you've watched a little bit of season 1, season 2 continues on and is worth watching. Is very good. It's just a show to me. Like if it's a rainy day, then I'm in to watch it. If it's a nice, briny day and I'm about to go out and go swimming, then it's not something I want to turn on as much.
And to be fair, I know it's based on a book, so I know it's not going to turn into a revenge tale in season 3. But
well, I mean, the book was only one book, and they were already past the book material.
Probably
so it's
not
all...
where they want it to end up on their message thing, and like, hey, I don't know, but you could see that being very cathartic for that type of show.
I don't think it would go in that direction.
Yes, exactly. But you could see, like, in your mind, like, oh, that would be very satisfying after seeing 2 seasons of just oppression and anything else you watched?
That was it, because I went to Chicago over the weekend, and moved to a new job, so I had a lot of stuff going on. Didn't have a chance to watch much else.
Congratulations on the new job.
Oh, thank you.
Same place, just different role.
Different role.
Yeah.
A little bit better title.
So I was watching stuff that I've seen before. You know what I mean? I have a lot of that stuff. But I did watch Spontaneous Combustion, the Tobe Hooper film. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
I did not know he even made this film. I don't know why, but Brad Dourif is the star of it. And I think it was 1990. I should have looked this up. It's on Amazon Prime, because I was going to try to watch. There's a couple German films that looked really interesting on Shudder, and then this Japanese series from the 70s. I don't know if it's called Scorpio or Scorpion is the first one. But Shudder was not working for me today. Like, it was just trying to click on stuff, and it just would never load the movies.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me look it up. What did I say it was called? Spontaneous Combustion.
Yeah, Tobe Hooper.
Which I always thought that was like an interesting concept. Like when I was younger, when I found out about, like, probably middle school or something, I always thought that would be awesome if there was a movie based on that. And I always try to figure out, how would that work? You know, like who's the villain, or you know what I mean, or what are you fighting against if it's just all spontaneous? And I remember reading recently that there was somebody working on a film about that. I don't remember who it was, but I feel like it was somebody on maybe the same wavelength as Darren Aronofsky, or I can't think of his name, but you know what I mean? Somebody that could make something interesting out of that, but have not heard anything about that. So yeah, this is from 1990. So this is a post-Poltergeist Tobe Hooper, or if you believe that Spielberg directed most of that film, which may be the case. I don't know. Or
on the kind of the downslide from the height of his commercial success.
Yeah. So, well, actually, I don't know the full box office, but the budget for this film was $5.5 million, and the opening weekend it made $50,000.
Well, a lot of times you get limited releases or things like that. Then
so maybe that's why it's not very well known. I think I'd heard that the disc was expensive, but yeah, it's on Amazon Prime. So basically, I'll give a little bit of spoilers, but this is just the setup of the film. It's set in, like, I think the 1950s, and they are testing a shelter that is atomic bomb proof.
Yeah.
And I think they reveal this later. They may have said it in the beginning. I may have missed it. But essentially, this couple, they get injected with something that's supposed to protect them from the effects of radioactivity or radiation. So that is successful. And then, but they're in this bunker when the bomb went off, and they find out, while they were there, he impregnated her. So they're like, well, what the hell? That kind of screws up what we were, the test subjects or whatever. So they let them have the kid, and which is 9 months later, obviously, and something happens, and then all of a sudden, as they're in the hospital, as the baby gets handed off to somebody that's part of that program, she's starting to walk away, and all of a sudden the mother bursts into flames, and then the father bursts into flames, and then they just get burnt up together. The effects are not that good. They're kind of cool, but
90s,
when people are
budget.
burning, sometimes it literally looks like somebody's on a mannequin with suit arms swinging just back and forth like they're spinning it. Not the best effects. And of course, it was $5 million budget.
Yeah.
But a cool setup. It's a very B-movie setup almost in some ways.
Yeah.
So then you flash forward to present day, which I guess is 1990, and Brad Dourif is the son. He knows nothing about his parents, so it kind of goes from there. and it is probably the most Cronenberg Tobe Hooper film I've seen. I love Cronenberg's style of like Scanners and Videodrome and stuff. Little bit of conspiracy stuff, little bit of, I guess, body horror in some ways. There's flames coming out of people and stuff like that. So there's some pretty cool elements to it. Not a stellar film, but definitely an easy watch. Like I enjoyed having it on while I was kind of doing some other things. And it's older films are way more forgivable than newer ones, I think. Like if you go to the theaters or you rent something new, if it's not like top tier, normally people are mad online. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're ready to attack it. If it's an older film and you just discover it, it's a different thing. It's like, oh, hey, this is...
Yeah, because people can forgive wonky effects and something that they stumble upon that's older.
Or stories that aren't tightly woven. You know what I mean? If they feel like, hey, they just stumbled across something. This was something I didn't know existed, so I had no anticipation for it. I didn't make up a movie in my mind.
You're just like, oh, this thing exists.
Yes,
what is it about?
I mean, it's a lot easier to kind of be satisfied by a film rather than be mad that it's not something you wanted it to be.
Yeah.
So time at least has the benefit on cinema like that. But yeah, I liked it for sure. It's definitely, I think, probably significant. Just seeing Brad Dourif and Tobe Hooper at this time, it's a pretty cool little movie.
Yeah.
Not stellar, but not terrible at all. It's pretty decent.
Yep. So is that it?
Pretty much. Like I said, I rewatched a bunch of stuff I've seen a million times, but...
All right, so moving to our discussion of Cargo, the recent release that has Martin Freeman and is on Netflix. And like a lot of these Netflix movies come out, and then the thing that like their TV series get more press, or they're not, I don't know if it's a TV series because it's Netflix. Their series get a lot of press, like Stranger Things, Orange is the New Black,
House of Cards.
House of Cards. So a lot of those shows got a big push. A lot of their movies seem like they come out and people talk about them on podcasts and review sites and things like that. But it doesn't seem like there's a huge popular culture push for some of them. And it's just interesting, like looking at the download numbers and the view numbers for like our podcast, like on Netflix, things like The Ritual or things like that. Those podcasts usually do okay or like better than average. They don't do the numbers that a Rob Zombie or Eli Roth review does. Yeah. But
it's probably too because one, they want people to stream because it means they're hooked on, or they want people to watch series because it means they're streaming more. They're on the Netflix app more.
They just want people to have a constant stream of things on their service that continue to make them want to watch it.
When they said their competition isn't like other video providers,
it's sleep.
So and you could see that based on maybe what they buy films for or what they produce them for. I'm sure the budget for this was way less than a series like Stranger Things. You know what I mean? Or Orange is the New Black. So I could see the reason like, hey, we want to get our money's worth. Let's push these series a little bit more because also, too, we can make more of them. Like, I understand why they basically don't market these films like this because they spend a little money and they don't expect a large return, which is cool. It gives creators to, more opportunities.
Because it doesn't have a listed budget to know what the budget is. But this seems like a movie that was probably a few $1 million.
Yeah.
Like under 10 for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of like a Blumhouse mold, like, lowish budget with... I mean, I don't know how the compensation worked for like a Martin Freeman level star. I guess, too, we should go with what the movie is.
And this is kind of about the movie as well, but not that the budget seems constricted. It is based on the story. It's set in the Outback, I assume.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
So in the Australian Outback.
It's been like a couple weeks since I watched this.
Because it ties into like cultural things and some of the...
So, there's not... They don't have to remake an entire downtown Atlanta into something that is in ruins. It's...
Yeah, they're not spending a bunch of money on CG. So, and two, we won't do any spoilers till the end because it's something that, you go into it... The only real setup you need to know, and this is things that are in the trailers. I always recommend... not watching the trailers, but it's essentially about Martin Freeman is married, he has a wife and a small baby, and something happens that results in him having to find a way for his baby to be safe within like a certain time frame. And that's kind of just the general setup for the concept. And it's based on a 2013 short film that the directors of that short film are making this movie, which is really cool when you see that because like that's the dream, to make a short film and to have it become an actual movie and see that come to fruition, because you've seen it happen with this and with Lights Out, and there's been other ones where that's happened, and it's rarer than it is.
Yeah, a million shorts being made. Not all the time when they get made into features. And sometimes maybe they shouldn't be made into features. Maybe they should give those directors a chance to say, hey, do you got another idea that would be conducive to a feature film?
Well, like something like Lights Out, they just like the concept and the name, so then they, got writers to put together a story. But like with Cargo, like I said, we'll save all the spoilers, the big spoilers for the end.
Because go watch it on Netflix.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. You can go watch it. I mean, we'll talk about. We'll Mark when we go into sports. I do think you need to discuss some of that to really get into it. But I think that the performances in it were good. They were strong. Like Martin Freeman's always good, reliable, and everything he does. Mm-hmm. The different cast members were all strong. Because the young girl that he interacts with was really good as well. And some people in the cast don't have pictures on IMDb, so I'm trying to remember who's everybody's name were.
Yeah, it's been a couple weeks since I watched this.
Yeah, because we had meant to record this previously, but got sidetracked with other stuff. But just the overall idea is just in a post-apocalyptic world.
In a world
where there's zombies. Which is, I don't know how many zombie movies have been made at this point, but it's got to be in the thousands.
It's this. So for me, this film would have been a lot more interesting in 2003 or 2004, around that time. You
had in 2004, I think. 2000. I don't remember the exact timeline, but like 2003
was 28 days later. I think.
Because 28 days later, I think, I'm trying to remember exactly. I can look this on my phone.
Shaun of the Dead was 2004.
Because Shaun of the Dead, and within like a year, you had 28 Days Later, Shaun of the Dead, and Dawn of the Dead. Mm-hmm. Dawn of the Dead was the biggest not the biggest critical hit, the biggest financial hit. And then 28 Days Later was pretty financially successful as well.
Especially based on budget.
Yeah, and then Shaun of the Dead was successful too, but it was more of like a cult hit. Like it still did good box office and made money. It just wasn't as successful financially as Dawn of the Dead. It also had a lower budget. It was a British film being marketed to a U.S. audience. But you had those movies come out in all different flavors. 20 Days Later was more infected than zombie, which I think Cargo's kind of in that realm.
Yeah.
Shaun of the Dead was, more classic Romero-ish zombies that poked fun at that while still delivering an actual zombie movie. And Dawn of the Dead was running zombies that were still zombies. So you had like different flavors of it.
It was the triple X of zombies.
Yeah. And as we've seen with Zack Snyder's career after that, he's all about substance over style. But those kind of regenerated interest in the genre, which it kind of waned in the 90s and the 80s. Because in the 80s, you had like Return of the Living Dead and Day of the Dead.
Was that 91 or 90 Return?
No, that was in the 80s.
Was it 80?
That was
maybe
like,
it was 89, maybe?
I'm trying to think. I think
could be totally wrong.
I'm thinking that was like 85 or 86.
But, for me, so at this point, Cargo, there has just been a lot of zombie films. And
Return of the Living Dead was 85.
80, oh, wow. I don't know why I thought that was 90 for some reason.
They had like some of the sequels went to the 90s.
Yeah. For me, Cargo, it's in a world where there's not many zombie films.
Yeah.
It would have been a novelty. For me, it's very much, it is not super well at suspense or tension. And I'm not saying it has to, just because it's a zombie film, it has to be a horror film. But this is definitely coming from a angle of almost more of a drama.
Well, and two, it does, like the movie's cardinal sin is that it follows in the footsteps of a lot of other zombie or genre-esque movies like this without really spoiling things, like a main character goes through trials and tribulations, thinks they find sanctuary. It's kind of repeating this kind of trope you see in a lot of these movies.
Yeah, that's the thing. It feels like a lot of other zombie films in many ways, and you're just waiting for the end. At least me, I was just waiting for the end because I'm like, I kind of feel like I know how this might end.
So I think that like the setup is very familiar, and some of the characters that show up are familiar, and it has a lot of elements that you've seen before, and it's not really in those elements and just the story elements alone bringing that much that's new. The only thing they did kind of do was put a time clock on it or a timeline on it that wasn't immediate. Yeah. It was, a few days. So that does change the calculus and how that type of movie works.
They have a world they have built around the zombies, and and not just, hey, we don't know what this is. Like there has been they definitely have a universe as far as you could even build this out and say, hey, this is the rules for this world. Well, not that I'm saying you should, but there are rules and some things that they have to make it differentiate itself from other zombie films.
I would say, like, this movie, after having watched it, the thing that it did to set itself separate from a lot of other movies was not the story itself, because that really wasn't breaking any new ground. It was making you feel like they had rules and they had a universe set up for this. And they gave the zombies like unique characteristics in terms of what they did and how it looked. That made it. I mean, it wasn't like a Walking Dead ripoff. It had different visual style to what the zombies did, and then it just kind of had, Martin Freeman, who's always usually likable, and just kind of built things out from there. So it wasn't selling you on the zombie gore.
No, not at all.
A high concept. It's this meets this.
Yeah, it's a very simple storyline, but I had not seen this specific story in the zombie genre before, and it is something maybe that can only take place, or to some degree maybe, in this subgenre of zombies. Having said that, though, the short film accomplishes what it needs to accomplish in 7 minutes. What this film does basically in 90 minutes, I think.
Yeah, because if you haven't seen the short film, I guess it's better to watch the movie first and then the short film, because they do cover some similar things, because they kind of take like the strongest visual from the short film and have it in the movie. And the short is much more impactful because it's all within 7 minutes. Yeah. There's a lot of things happening, and I think it's better for it. The film, I do not think that they should have. They literally tried to lean into what the short was. Yeah. Obviously, they built some things out and built the word out a little bit, and added more characters and stuff like that. But it did not make the experience better. It just added more. It didn't make the impact of the story stronger. Yeah. Yeah. And so, again, I don't think it was. I think to adapt this, they should have changed it from the short a little bit more, or even truncated it. Like the storyline in the short maybe should have been the first 20 or 30 minutes of this film, not 90 minutes. Well, yeah, I mean, because I'm trying to think of like what the experience necessarily was of watching it, because a lot of times I think the attitude to like theatrical release versus Netflix release does create different expectations. Yeah. If I go to the theater and I pay or use the movie pass, whatever, people are paying $10+ just to see the movie for themselves. And then if you add in food and snacks and you bring in, significant others, kids, whatever, you could be talking about an $80 experience, at a minimum. If you go to the theater on like the cheap movie night and you go to a matinee show and you're still like $6-7, but you had to drive to go there, time out your day. It's not just a thoughtless, let's see what's on TV.
Which I think this benefits this film. I think this is where this film should be on Netflix.
Because this is a movie that if you didn't have Martin Freeman as your lead, you just had an unknown, and you showed this at Sundance, for example, or one of these different film fests, you might get a little bit of buzz about the concept or things like that, but I think it would, maybe at a limited run release or video on demand, kind of come and go. I think having Martin Freeman in it, who, like, to U.S. audiences, is getting to be more of a draw because people are aware of all the things he's been in, but, like, to international audiences and UK audiences, obviously that gives it some credence because, he was in the British version of The Office and Sherlock. And then he's been in big movies like The Hobbit and then the Marvel movies.
What if they reboot the U.S. Office and they have him as Tim
again?
Yeah.
Well, I mean that would be something. I mean, like,
yeah. I mean he did a good job in it. But for me, I had saw people talk about it and not saying it was terrible. You know, people were saying, "Hey, it was decent. It was fine."
Yeah.
Just based on and I don't write off all zombie films. Have I had my fill to where I'm not seeking them out? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But like Train to Busan, love that film. Thought that was a great zombie film. For me, I would not. I was going to pass on this film because it did seem like more of a sort of drama, but it seemed like it was leaning on something that's, I don't know. It just seemed like it was leaning on something that could have easily been mishandled or just kind of ride on that concept alone. And I feel like that's what it did. It just kind of rode on that concept a little bit without making anything super exciting in the film. It didn't really, there weren't many surprises in this film for me.
Well,
so I only watched it for the podcast because we did it, and it wasn't awful at all, but it was very flaccid, I think. That's how I would describe this film.
It was just plopped
and Nicole
out
asked me, and I
flaccid.
was like, don't bother. Not that it's the worst thing ever, but there's so much stuff out there to watch,
Well, I
especially on
think-
Netflix.
Like trying to conceptualize, like I am kind of zombied out, and like Train to Busan I enjoyed just because it was a little bit different flavor, a little bit different things going on. But in general, like there's been so much zombie content that concept needs to be something really kind of out there to draw me into it, make me super excited. This movie didn't have kind of an out there concept or something that's like a high concept, like a bank heist during the zombie apocalypse or something. But I mean, that would probably be a terrible movie.
Or a
'cause all you
heist
need-
during a hurricane.
Yeah.
Hurricane heist, maybe.
Pulling off a heist during a really heavy flooding session rainstorm, which was that movie Hard Rain with Christian Slater and Morgan Freeman. But this movie, the main thing that made me watch it was just it was free on Netflix. And usually like stuff Martin Freeman's in. So those things, I think that if that's the viewpoint you're coming from, because it's a lot easier for me to recommend a movie on Netflix. Because on Netflix you can say, okay, go hit play. Once you're about 15 minutes in, if you're not really feeling it, exit out and watch something else.
You only lost 15 minutes.
And it's not like you have to go to the theater, pay money, because Hereditary did pretty well at the box office a second weekend, so it's made like $27 million after the box office, which for the budget of like $10 million, that's good and it's going to be profitable. But that's a movie that some people, that's just not going to be a movie for them.
Yeah, that's.
So you get somebody's expectations up and they go to the theater, you spend the money on the snacks, and then you get like 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes in, you're like, this really just is not for me.
Yeah.
And that just really sours you on the movie. As opposed to Netflix, if you're just sitting on your couch, just part of your existing subscription, and instead of watching The Office or something again, you watch this new movie. Even if because there's been movies before I started and didn't finish because I just was very meh on it, and just didn't really feel like finishing it. So I think that the barrier to entry there is lower because you don't have to go out and watch it. You don't have to specifically pay money out of your own pocket to watch it on VOD or anything like that. So it's a movie that you can recommend to people. It's like, okay, so if you want a zombie movie that has Martin Freeman that isn't super gory or scary or anything like that, and it has more like drama and human elements, and trod some ground that's already been covered before
Many times.
but does at least have an interesting visual aesthetic to what they're doing with their zombies and how they behave and kind of the rules, all that, then it's something that it's not going to hurt you to check it out.
It's a lot of qualifiers too, though, and it's very little reward. You know what I mean? Yeah, the stuff they do with zombies is pretty cool, but it's like for me personally, there's so little reward to the time investment on this film. And not that it's a long film, but for me, after all the zombie films, I was kind of like, I personally don't give it a strong recommend. You don't have to give your score right now, but I'd probably give it like a 6 or so.
So
it wasn't offensively bad, but it just...
So looking on IMDb, the average user review is 6.4 out of 10. The Metacritic is 65. Oh, I guess I never said the synopsis.
Isn't that...
After an epidemic spread all over Australia, a father searches for someone to protect his daughter.
Yeah.
So I think, too, so like 65 Metacritic, 6.4 out of 10 IMDb user score. It's one of those movies where I wonder if Rotten Tomatoes has a review, because I know a lot of times something I've found listening to people that have movies that get made into Netflix originals or that ended up as Netflix originals, there's not a lot of critics who go out and review the movies that are on there because audiences aren't concerned with, do I have to go to the theater or not to watch this? It's mostly just, is this worth me spending 30 seconds?
There's film criticism where
it's an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, but not a ton of reviews.
I mean, film criticism, I guess traditionally maybe too, was, you are discussing the themes of films and kind of what they mean to the specific writer and are used to educate viewers. But there's also the part where somebody is a film critic or reviewing the film to be like, hey, is this worth your time and money? Netflix has made this weird space where it's like, what do you do when you talk about these films?
Well, because
basically you're just giving your personal opinion to see if people want to hear what you have to say.
Because there's some things like Bright, where Bright got a lot of views and got a lot of discussion when it came out. A lot of the discussion was negative. It was one of those movies where it seemed like there was a little bit of a divide between a lot of general audiences and critics, where a lot of critics thought that it was a relatively bad movie. A lot of audiences enjoyed it. I felt it just felt like a Will Smith movie from the late 90s, just made 20 years later. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, it even had the same types of rapport and jokes between him and the other character. It had orcs wearing FUBU or an equivalent type of clothing to that. It's just a lot of stuff like that. So I think that Netflix has gotten to the point that entertainment is it's not the end goal of making a good movie. The end goal is just gaining subscribers. So if you make enough stuff across different genres to bring people in, that's their goal. So I don't think they're necessarily as concerned with quality on a lot of the individual movies. Like the movie Open House has been kind of critically reviled, and the general audiences hated it too, or had very negative reactions.
Across the board.
So, I mean, there may have been some good elements in it, but I think the ending to it just left a lot of people, like, upset.
Yeah.
And I don't think Netflix really cares. It's like, did the fact that a lot of people watched it had negative things to say, which in turn caused their friends to watch it, that to them is a net positive if there's a lot of bad buzz, but a million people watched it.
Yeah.
If it
as long
was
as they're booting up the Netflix app.
So there's just things like that. So with Cargo, it's not an open house type situation where it's just a movie that would have fared very poorly in theaters. I think if this had been a theatrical release, it would have been like a Fox Searchlight type deal where it was in theaters, probably made its budget back, got a little bit of discussion, but that's about it. But Netflix just dropping it out there caused probably a little bit more conversation around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because more people see it,
And like I said, it's not a terrible movie. It's just if you're a zombie fan and you want to watch new zombie movies, then of course that's kind of a no-brainer. It's one that on the quality scale is not terrible, not super low budget, super indie type stuff.
Yeah.
But if you're just a general audience member that's kind of burned out on zombies, there's nothing here that's like super new and original that's going to make you be really glad that you watched it. But there's nothing in it that's so bad that you would just be so angry you spent your time watching it.
Yeah.
And come away angry.
Yeah. It's not offensively bad or anything like that. It's just,
I think too, part of how much mileage you'll get out of it is, does thinking about the fate of a baby move you emotionally? If the answer is yes, then it gets a little bit more emotional mileage. Yeah. But obviously, like you having, an infant or a young child, it didn't seem like that really pushed you.
No,
too
because
much.
I can separate. It would push me if the film was good at building that on its own. Like, if it didn't rest on that just being a baby of Martin Freeman's child, like, if they made you care that much about a gerbil. You know what I mean? Like the writing was that good, or the situation, like, hey, we got to make sure this gerbil's okay. You know what I mean?
Like Wall-E's is a robot.
A lot of times they, you can put in a baby or something that automatically supplants any sort of other investment in writing or whatever. That's like, hey, this is, the stakes are high because it's a baby, and babies are they're defenseless and they're innocent.
It draws a lot of strong reaction from people.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, so I guess what we can do is just give what our thoughts or score are, and then move into spoilers, because I think we kind of discussed all of our thoughts. So out of 10,
6 for me.
Yeah, I mean, because like the Metacritic and the the Metacritic and the user grade on IMDb are like 6.5, 6.4. Rotten Tomatoes is 80. I think like a 6 is a good rating. Because like on my scale, anything from 5 up is, watchable and fun. There's some stuff that is bad and it's a 1 or a... So the things to me, like if it's a 1 or 2, it's bad and boring. Nothing in it to really make you want to watch. Like The Room is a bad movie, but it's entertaining because of how bad it is. So then that takes it from being a movie that, on all the merits of story, acting, directing, green screen, visual, all that stuff, it's a 1. But it's just so bizarre that it ratchets it up where I may watch that over an actually good movie with a coherent plot and good acting. But like Cargo is one that's very competent, well acted, well shot. There's nothing glaringly wrong there. It's just, to me, it didn't have the extra oomph to make it a must recommend. So it's just kind of out there in that land. If it's on Netflix, so the barrier to watching it is just simply hitting play and taking the amount of time out of your life to watch it.
If you have Netflix.
If you have Netflix.
Don't sign up for Netflix for this film.
Let's see. Does it say how long the movie is? It is an hour and 45 minutes. So not super long. I think if this was a little bit shorter, like an hour and a half, if it moved just a little bit quicker.
Even still, I just think there are more satisfying scenes in it. That's the thing. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, so we'll move into spoilers. So if you haven't watched the movie, it's on Netflix. We'll go into full spoilers, so you can duck out now. But, the story, so when Martin Freeman's wife gets bitten, or she gets turned, or, attacked, because he goes to this boat and gets the supplies and comes back, and she sees the boat and goes herself later and gets attacked. So then, she has the 48-hour window of time, and they have the car crash, then he gets bit, and then he only has 48 hours. So it's him just trying to find somewhere for his kid to be safe.
Which the short starts with him waking up from the car crash. And it goes from there, which just the short is just so tight and well done, but this film just extrapolates it.
Well,
and I get building the relationship between the mom and stuff like that. Like that was not a bad decision, but for me it was watching this film. I said, well, I don't assume he's going to find a cure, so I assume he's going to find somebody for the baby, and then he's going to die.
You find out that he finds some of the native groups from Australia that are kind of taking things back to the natural roots.
Aboriginals.
Yeah, they're kind of going back to the roots of their culture and being successful and safe and building a community that succeeds, whereas the evil industrialist, oil refinery, fracking, all that stuff.
No fracking. There's some anti-fracking stuff in here.
So the other thing, too, on the movie is... So, Martin Freeman's with his baby. He comes across this guy that he helps save, and you think, oh, he's safe. And it's like a lot of zombie movies do. Your character finds out that the other humans are more dangerous than the zombies. So the guy that he goes back with is keeping a girl against his will, or against her will, and just a generally bad guy. Mm-hmm. So then you have that trope that shows up in pretty much every zombie movie, or a lot of them. And then you have him get away from that, and it's just trying to find someone to watch his daughter, and then the little girl that he works with throughout most of the movie. They have like an interesting relationship because it's kind of, they grow on each other a little bit, but it's still kind of confrontational and not super close, and not like where you see that. I mean, they do appreciate each other by the end of it, and then the little girl like has him buried in the traditional way that shows respect for him. And they do find a way to replicate the scene from the short, of where as Martin Freeman is turning into the zombie, he puts the thing in his mouth and has like his mouth bound and his hands tied so that he is not going to be able to attack anyone. They just have this stick with the meat or whatever in front of him, so that he just keeps walking forward, so the little girl and his daughter can just ride on his back out into the distance.
Yeah, it's like I almost wished it would have ended. That part would have ended much sooner in the film, because like you kind of expect it to go there, and then it does, and then that's it. Like, maybe whoever gets the baby, this is like backseat screenwriting, but maybe whoever gets the baby, like then they have a journey, and it's about like, hey, just communities and like, hey, you know, trying to protect the innocent and do the right thing, even though it's maybe not their kid. You know, maybe they go through some troubles. Just because, based on the synopsis, because I don't know if it's said on Netflix, but I knew that like, hey, the dad gets bit and he's got to find somebody to watch his kid. So in my mind, I thought, I think I know how this is going to end. I hope it doesn't end the exact way that I think it will, and it does. Yeah. And that's what just makes it like so unexciting, I think.
Yeah, because you do, you know, it kind of goes where you think it will, and like him finding a cure might have been too much of like a happy ending.
Yeah, I didn't want him to find a cure, but I didn't want it to just the very end of the film being him dying and the final, you know what I mean? Like,
well, and two, like the way they portrayed the group was kind of odd because it showed them at times seeming kind of scary with the things they were doing, but they were killing zombies, so it's not like it was bad.
Yeah,
it's just it was kind of like an inconsistent portrayal throughout. It didn't really show.
I guess it's supposed to be mysterious.
Yeah, it didn't really show much of the behind the scenes and the relationship type stuff until towards the end.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff in it like that where it just kind of, like I said, the things where it treaded a lot of the same ground. Because, like, was it 28 Days Later had, you know, your core characters get to somewhere I think is safe, and then the people are more villainous than the zombies or the infected. And that happens in a lot of those movies, you know. Zombie movies have always had a lot of twists like that. So it's just the kind of story beats were all pretty standard and expected. It's just, you know, if you really love Martin Freeman or you really love the fact that these zombies like have goop that covers their eyes, like the crust that gets in your eyes when you're young and you couldn't open them, if that just covers your eyes and your mouth and you vomit out weird stuff and you put your head in the sand and...
Yeah, there's some cool stuff with that for sure, but it's just, I don't know, it's just a shame the rest of it isn't extremely exciting. I'm interested to see what they do next, but it doesn't make me super excited to follow their career. You know what I mean? Follow what they're doing, but they made a competently done film.
I think for the era of Netflix stuff, this is a perfect movie for them because it's not a huge budget. It's got, you know, it's got a well-known star internationally, and it's subject matter that's not too hard to delve into, and it's something they made probably for a decent budget. So there's all these things that make it like a good investment for them and things like this.
Yeah.
And this one isn't like a home run, but making movies at this level, I would like to see that continue because it's not astronomical budget. You know, honestly, I'd rather see $10 million movies than one $100 million movie.
Than one Bright.
Yeah. And it's just because I think that they're like, I just really hope it doesn't
you
go in the
see different
direction.
ideas from different creators.
Yeah. And you give like a wider swath. So the movie like was good enough. Like I wasn't upset that I watched it, and it is a recommend. Like if somebody has Netflix and they like Martin Freeman or they like zombie movies, it's not the worst thing you could watch. There's, you know, a lot of stuff out there, but it's not a must recommend, and it's something that if it was in the theaters, it'd be a little bit harder to kind of recommend going out. And
I mean, even for me, like the daughter stuff, you know, or the child stuff, it's like even whenever he goes off with the guy that I guess is running the oil refinery or whatever, you know, he's just like, hey, watch my kid. Like he doesn't even give his kid a kiss or anything. Yeah. Like I would like be so worried just based on the situation. Like, hey, am I ever going to see my kid again? I'm going out with this guy I don't know. I'm already bitten. Like, you know what I mean? Like they just didn't build up the drama. They didn't even, as much as I was like, whatever, it's a zombie drama kind of with, you know, there's some zombie action, but they didn't even milk the drama enough for me. They didn't mine it or frack it to its potential.
Well, and you like the Martin Freeman's character having to hide the fact that he's been bitten or infected. Like they didn't really play that up as much.
Yeah, I mean that happens in all kinds of zombie films. Like,
and
it's just...
yeah, so there's a lot of things like that where they could have taken things a little bit further. I mean, it is impressive to go from like a short film to a feature, and to get a concept made into a feature film, and to get, you know, to snag an actual star. So that is an impressive feat. Something that we would hope to be able to do. Something that we, you know, have worked on.
It's perfectly fine film. It just, you know,
now like if
it left me wanting more out of the experience.
Yeah, like when it comes to end of the year top 10 list, if somebody put this on their list, I wouldn't be like, what?
Yeah,
you know, it's just it wouldn't be on mine because it didn't really gel for me. Because like The Ritual is another movie. You haven't watched that yet on Netflix. That's one a lot of people have been talking about. It's got a lot of buzz, and it's more kind of in the horror world. That one has more stuff I think to kind of talk about or to remember than Cargo. Like Cargo, I came out of it and I was like, oh, okay, that was fine. Because I liked it about as much as other recent zombie movies. It just didn't do anything that really kind of blew me out of the water. But yeah, so it's on Netflix. You can watch that and let us know what you think in the comments. For this video, if you're watching on YouTube, you can comment. You can send us an email at podcast@houseofastor.com. You can comment on our social media post of it on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those places. But you can find everything we're doing at houseofastor.com. Find links there to all of our podcasts, short films, things like that. If you're in the Louisville area, two of our short films will be playing at the Louisville Fringe Fest in July. I believe it's on the 21st and is it the 18th?
I think so.
So I think it's on a Saturday and then like a Thursday or Wednesday. I'm going to have to look. We'll have an event soon that has the actual dates and times. But if you're in the Louisville area, they will be showing. One of them's at Monarch, which is a bar, and the other one's at Kaiju, which is a bar. I don't think it'll cost anything to go. But if you're in the area and you want to come out and say hi, we should be there. But we'll have more details about that soon once we get all that stuff nailed down. But just make sure to follow us on social media for updates on stuff like that, on Facebook for sure. And then if you want to find us specifically on the internet, the best place to find me is on Instagram at the William Caps.
And I'm at Blevin Sean on Twitter.
And that'll bring this episode of the House by the Video podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.
House by the Video